It's recording.
Yep, I just saw that. I was like, ooh.
Right, cool. Hey guys, welcome. I'm gonna let everybody file in here for a minute or two. Once I see those numbers kind of plateau, we'll get started. But thank you for carving some time out of your day today to hang out with Katherine and I. We're excited for this conversation. We enjoy these. I'll say that call is being recorded, so if you have to jump off or you want to share this conversation with somebody else, you are welcome to. We will send out the call recordings later this week, along with any other, anything else that we reference, documents, lists, workflow, whiteboarding docs, whatever. We will send you all of those resources. Then yeah, this is just kind of an Ask Me Anything. We've collected a bunch of questions. Thank you guys for submitting those over the last couple of weeks. And so we're going to prioritize those. I am monitoring both the chat and the Q&A. So if you have questions that you want to drop in there, I will happily, pitch those to Katherine and the two of us will tag team them. But this is kind of just a casual conversation. We like to get everybody together and talk shop. These webinars exist to help you guys solve problems, answer questions, and just, help you guys better your operating system. So that being said, we're a couple minutes after the hour, Katherine. We can go ahead and get started.
Sounds good.
Again, it is recorded, so if you have to drop off, no worries. We'll send you guys the recordings. My name is Kate Guillen. I am joined today with my good friend, Katherine Beltran. The two of us, own and operate here, Simplicity Ops, where we partner with RIAs to help you guys grow and scale your businesses to utilizing systems, workflows, processes, and technology. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We've collected a bunch of questions all around that. So I'm going to kind of play MC and pitch some questions to Katherine, who is a tremendous wealth of knowledge as a longtime Redtail trainer and now WealthBox expert. She runs all of our client engagements and has a tremendous amount of insight to share with you all today. So with that being said, KB, let's get after it, huh?
Yeah, ready when you are.
Okay. So we have a question about account feeds in the CRM. This is a Redtail specific question, but I'm curious how you would answer this. Is there a tool that I can log into to see all of my accounts with the different vendors that my clients have accounts with? I use Redtail and it seems like each account needs to be added separately. Do you have any best practices for using the data feed in Redtail and how to create consistency around account management in the CRM?
Yeah, assuming that we're actually having the data feed in from an integration, actually, let's start there. If you do not have an integration turned on, find a way to get that enabled. It is very painful to try to manually enter in every single aspect of contact data, specifically with the accounts, because then you have to stay on top of it. But we all know how much that can fluctuate. So I don't wish that on anyone. So whether you use Schwab, Albridge, Orion, whatever it is that you have as your option, get it to push in. That's part one. Now, there's kind of this assumption, and I get it. It's because we don't really scream it from the rooftop. The accounts itself don't push in all of the details. And that's really just because they try to release that kind of compliance limitability, that kind of thing. But there's nothing stopping you from actually bulk updating those contact field or the account fields as well. So like if you wanted to update what type of account it is or where it's coming from, you actually have that capability. So you can do it on an individual level. Again, see previous comment. That'll be extremely painful if you do that account by account by account. But if you can actually filter in, figure out like, hey, these are all the same types, you can bulk update from the accounts by contact report and quickly fill that in, which would then be a one-stop shop looking within Redtail of all the accounts. So there is still, of course, the little bit of a lag just because it isn't something that updates every second of every day. I don't think you'd want that. I could see that just completely slowing down your CRM, but that could be a really good spot to at least get that data updated. You can run reports quickly off of it. Then you could even run communications from there. So it really is that like little iceberg piece that just has so much behind it.
Well, and I like what you're saying about the importance of naming convention and consistency too. Setting up the feed is great. And in my experience, I was running an RIA that had multiple custodians. And so being able to see the feed at the contact, in the contact record, to be able to see what kind of accounts people have and where their custodian was helpful. But the way the feed comes over, like you're saying, is pretty gobbledygooky. So taking the time to put in a clean naming convention will make it so much more usable. And then we get this question a lot too, Catherine, which I think is important to mention. Redtail, your CRM, whichever one you use, is a fantastic place for managing your client relationships. But if you're looking for account specific information like real-time values and specific investments, specific
Yep.
models, you need to go to the source of truth, which is the custodian. I think the
Yep.
data feed is all good, but people get really ticked when they realize that, it batches every 24 hours and it's not a live feed and it's not
Yep.
real-time data. So keep that in mind and manage your expectations accordingly.
Yep. I would agree completely.
Okay, all right, this is a good question. So can you use Redtail or either CRM as a KPI tracker? And so they didn't put in specific KPIs, but I think this is interesting. And my mind goes back to a client that we had that did exactly this. If you know the key performance indicators that you're trying to track, you can absolutely use templates, categories, and the reports and the custom exports to track whatever metrics you're trying to track. Catherine, let's use like your KPIs, for example. Okay. So we run our business using a CRM too. Catherine has some KPIs that we measure every year to, because we offer bonuses at the end of the year. And so we can track client retention. We can track how many things people are doing, how successful those endeavors are, because we have statuses, categories, keywords, user defined fields, reports, set up to track whatever it is that you're trying to track. So you need to get really clear on what the KPIs are,
Yep.
and then use those fields within your CRM and set up reporting to be able to track whatever those metrics are at whatever cadence makes sense.
Yeah, I'm going to give my 2 cents here too. So definitely it helps when it comes to categories and types with activities and notes. That's really where it's going to be helpful. And again, really think both CRMs in this case, Wealthbox and Redtail, both with tasks, both with notes. But something else that I feel like is a kind of sleeper agent. And whenever we get to this point in the engagement, I usually get well, I don't really use it. And it's the opportunities as well. If you're trying to figure out how many prospects you have in your pipeline, how many of them have converted to clients, if you're not using tools, well, then yes, it's 100% complicated to figure out what's actually happening. But that is a very easy, you could see it right in front of you, visual. So don't sleep on those other tools as well.
That's a great point. All right, I'm going to move forward just because we've got a bunch of questions here. There's a couple questions here around shared company file storage. I can only speak from like the prospecting process, but what file systems do you see people use most often to manage documents, signed contracts, signed custodial paperwork? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we use SharePoint and it tends to be the big hitter on the market as well. It's not the only one, but it tends to be a big one. This is one of those I will put like an asterisk because if you are associated with like certain BDs, there are some limitations. So I will always say like go back and double check. But the beauty of something like SharePoint is that it is something that is easily accessible from anyone that you choose to share it with.
Right.
You don't have to have 800 versions of the same document. You have one living, breathing little space that you work in. And it does really help with that whole maintenance of you're not capping out at like 100 gigabytes. Like the space is quite large. That is one thing that you may run into with certain, I'm going to say like document storage places is that they might cap you at to me, an insanely small space. So whenever it comes to that, that's something else that I always recommend people look into because it might look all shiny and fancy and beautiful, but then they end up hitting a cap in 30 days. And that says, absolutely no, you don't need that, right? So I really like SharePoint. I've seen Box be another really popular one with Wealthbox. ShareFile, which I feel like often gets confused with SharePoint, is another one that integrates with Redtail. I know I'm going to say it here and I'm going to give my unsolicited 2 cents. I get the question frequently, like you have a growth plan on Redtail, you get the imaging included. Why don't you just use that? I'm not the biggest fan of that for several reasons. One, what I just commented on, you do have a cap in there and then you start to pay extra for every extra bit that you're over it, which could get costly. But more importantly, every time you upload a document, you want to make a change to it, you have to download it, re-upload it. And I could see that going horribly when it comes to having multiple versions. So that's again my unsolicited 2 cents here, but you got to do what you got to do at the end of the day. And my recommendation, make it easier on yourself. SharePoint.
Yeah, for sure. And easier on the clients because
Yeah.
you can securely share documents,
Yeah.
work on the same document at the same time without running
Yep.
into version control issues. Yeah, for sure. Um, all right, there's a question here about setting up recurring tasks. Like if a client needs to take a monthly distribution, what's your best practice around setting up recurring tasks? It becomes an issue if you've got 1,000 of the same tasks under their contact record. I'm curious your thoughts on how you handle recurring tasks and whether or not you think it bogs down the client contact record having so many of the same tasks.
No, actually, I do like recurring tasks because one, it's kind of a set it, forget it, and you get that reminder when it's relevant. So if you have something that happens to fall on the same day every single month for forever, then it's easy to set a recurring task or activity for that matter. Now, here's where I feel like people really get confused on this because it's like if I add all these extra details in this one activity or task, and then I have it again the next month, I have to go back and look at it. In reality, you should be looking back at it and making it easier on yourself. If you're connected with Redtail, I know there's that description box, and I know your gut is just like, let me put everything in there. But don't shy away from the linked notes as well. If it's something that is incredibly relevant, I always say, like, keep it simple, first of all. And second of all, covering your butt. If it's something along those lines of recommendations, we're pulling money, anything like that, put it in as a linked note and then use that category to your advantage. Because then when you come in there, if you have it, let's say for 2 years, you're looking at 24 notes minimum. You can always go to the notes on the left-hand side, filter by that category, and you just have all 24 notes right in front of you instead of pulling open every single activity under the sun. So that's one. Now, if it's more so with Wealthbox, similar concept, actually. There's just not a thing called linked notes. You just add it in as a regular note on the contact record and then use a note tag. Note tag would act like the categories. So it again will still help with the whole searching and filtering. But again, you're just limiting yourself to that one little section that you're really trying to find. So whether it's something along the lines of monthly distributions or, whatever it is, there's always recurring things that you can think of. You use that category, use those note tags, makes it easier in the long run. And then you don't have to keep either moving the calendar event because I feel like that creates false data. And two, that's more work to me. And we could limit the clicks. And that's definitely not limiting the clicks.
No, I agree. And for like you were touching on the building out the historical timeline, you want to have a timestamp for compliance reasons that you issued the distribution on whatever the date was.
Yep.
And if you don't want to see all the tasks under the person's notes page, just unclick it. But at least if you're ever asked to produce, the distribution timeline, you can do that. I'm glad we're on the same page with that. There's a couple more questions here around utilizing the CRM as a task management system. I'm curious if you can give us an overview around how you would suggest or how you see people use the CRM as a task management system.
You're going to get me geeked out on this because this is easily my favorite piece. Mostly because, again, what we deal with on a day-to-day basis tends to be tasks. Yes, we're meeting with our clients and prospects, but all that filler time in between are those to-do items that we have to get done. A couple of things that I will just say super high level, but really pay off in the long run. Template like crazy. Where I see task management failing horribly, and I will really stress horribly, is when we have those inconsistencies and the lack of efficiency behind it. What ends up happening when you don't use those templates is you could approach something different than the way I approach it when it comes to that whole subject line. And then that's enough of a quirk. And then it comes into the whole, okay, well, I didn't give as much detail in the description as maybe you did, Kate. So when you have those templates, you get it where it is more regimented. You have it where the subject is always consistently the same. How you have that description gives you those prompts to make sure that you are covering all of those details. So you're not having to keep adding and adding and adding. And then especially if you're giving that task to someone else, they're not sitting over there going, cool, message me when you're actually ready for me to work on this. If you have it all in one spot, it's really just prompting you to follow everything that needs to happen. So template like crazy. If you can get it where it again is repeatable, our bare minimum is 3 times a week. If you done it that much, it's a template in my mind. So if you create that, it takes you all of, I'd say, maybe 5 minutes to create it in the long run, and then you use it over and over and over again. The other thing I will die on is that you need to have those tasks linked to a contact record. And yes, again, most of the things we do is going to be for an outside source, whether that's for a client or a prospect, but that's not always the case. There's always improvements that you do internally as well. I'll even say right now, we're doing a lot of updates where we're testing things out, we're trying things, seeing if it works, just to see if it can create that efficiency. Well, if we don't link it to our own business record, we're losing that history of everything that we're trying out. So I will die on this hill, link it to a contact, whether it's an external or more internal, your own business record. It really is going to make really pay dividends in the long run. Besides all of that, the biggest thing I will stress is that you have to stay on top of them. I know that's a gimme answer, but you'd be surprised how many times we'll hop into, again, either CRM and we'll see a bunch of overdue or past due task items. And it's really because people don't realize that they have things assigned to them. So it's a good practice to always have several tabs open of your CRM, and one of those being your task and or to do items, however you want to kind of look at it. It's always tasks though. Have that task open. Now, this is one little, I'm going to give a kudos to Wealthbox here. They made it a little easier on us. When you open up that task, you can also view your workflow steps. So it truly is a one-stop shop list of everything you're responsible for. Redtail, just one extra tab, not the end of the world. You're just opening one extra tab for your workflow tasks. So that way, again, you still are on top of everything that you have. The last thing I want you to do is get 2 weeks behind, 3 weeks behind, 4 weeks behind. And then here we are looking at things from 2022 because we just kept forgetting about them. So stay on top of your items, roll over, reschedule when needed, but really make sure you actually pay attention to what's there.
No, I appreciate what you're saying. So one of the things that comes to mind that I hear a lot when I talk to clients and prospects is, how do I get people to actually buy in and adopt this stuff? And my answer is always, you got to make it really simple for them. And so I know the idea of templating tasks, templating anything sounds like a pain in the rear and like it's time consuming, but I promise it's short-term pain for long-term gain. And that's how you're going to get everybody on your team using a consistent task management system, is if you template out your tasks. And then I'm curious too, because the CRM as a task management system extends beyond just your tasks, just your calendar. Can you tell me a little bit about how then you would incorporate a workflow as part of a task management process?
Yeah, and I do want to clarify too, because this is where it gets into the super gray confusing area. With Redtail terminology, activities is incorporating calendar events and tasks. They then use the same terminology of task under workflows, which is a separate piece. They're not necessarily something that overlaps. Keep in mind, though, your workflow really is a process, or what my brain likes to accept, a bundle of tasks. It's a list of things that I get to do. Sometimes it has to be in a specific order. Sometimes it's all just relating to the overall process. So an easy one that I always like to bring up, just quarterly maintenance workflow. It's one that I think everyone should have in their database. And it's really just because it's making sure that, yes, everything is really nice and clean. You're staying on top of things. And it really is just making sure that you guys are using the CRMs to your best knowledge. So it's literally just a list of tasks that you end up working through. Now, to clarify, on the Wealthbox side, task is strictly how it sounds, and then they use workflow steps. Now, I'm going to kind of get a little ahead of myself. I'll let Kate really talk about it, so I'm not going to steal her thunder here, but there is now a function called subtasks that has recently been added into the workflow process. So that's really just think of that as like, I can now have multiple items open at the same time and multiple people can work on it. So it's not like, hey, I'm holding everyone up because I'm out of town type of thing. It really does open up more possibilities of getting more items finished. So boiling it down, really simple level, workflows, your processes has usually multiple steps. Think of it as a guideline. I always like to look at it as like the cheat sheet. If you hired someone new, this is how they'd have to work through it. And ultimately that actually tests to make sure that you have built them out correctly. Whereas your activities or tasks, they're kind of those one-offs. Or with Redtail, the activities could be the actual meeting itself. So sometimes there's that little overlap. The task itself can be that call to action. hey, we have to do a Benny change. In the description, I put what the change is, but the workflow is actually telling you how to do that Benny change.
Piggybacking on that, I like to think of a workflow as something that follows a chronological order. A task is something that's stagnant, like call somebody back or like do something.
Yeah.
But how you actually execute the request is the workflow. And
Right.
so one of the other questions we get here a lot is like, well, what workflow should I incorporate into my process? Anything that's done more than 3 times, it has more than 3 steps. You can go to our website and download our recommended workflows to get you kind of started thinking through what what most people workflow. But like you said, Catherine, it's just a series of steps and
Yep.
tasks. And Wealthbox just rolled out this week these subtasks like you're talking about. It's something Redtail has always done where the step is the chronological step 1, 2, 3, 4, and the subtasks are what need to be done as part of that step. But what I'm liking about this is the opportunity for you and I to like kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We can both be working
Yep.
in the same step at the same time, you doing your piece, me doing my piece. And I'm really pleased that Wealthbox has rolled that out. I'm excited about what that's going to do for Wealthbox workflow users. So cool. All right, I love this one, and this gets in. People have a lot of questions around additional tech that should be integrated as part of their tech stack. This is something you and I have been having deep conversations around recently. So probably doesn't come as a surprise to most of you. Catherine and I try to practice what we preach in terms of running Simplicity Ops in this business and using systems, processes, workflows, and technology to help us do our job better so that we can serve more people. There's a lot of questions here around AI and note takers. I think we should touch on that. And then I want to talk about a couple of other key pieces of technology that's really helped us and our clients run their businesses with more efficiency. And so there's a question here around Zox versus Jump versus FinMate. What are our thoughts on that? And I'll just tell you, I had the same question. And so I went and asked these companies and looked up a couple of studies. And here is my thoughts. Catherine and I have recently moved from Grain to FinMate so that we can use the same technology that our clients that we're recommending to our clients to make sure that it's solving all the problems that they say they're going to solve. And in fact, it is. It's created a tremendous amount of efficiency in our own business, and we've heard the same thing from our clients. And so FinMate is our preferred AI note taker for a couple of reasons. One, XYPN did a review on all of these pieces of technology, and FinMate got a 5 out of 5 in terms of accuracy in the transcript, where the others didn't quite stack up quite as high. It's got the most accurate meeting notes. It directly integrates with both Redtail and Wealthbox. It proactively deletes data, so it doesn't store the data. It's intended to push the data into your CRM, which has all the compliant security measures in place. It is not like a trainable AI bot for security purposes. And honestly, in addition to the accuracy, we have found that the meeting summaries push very easily into the client's contact record. It allows you to piece out action items that plug directly into the client's contact record. And it comprises a follow-up email summary, which is huge, and it has the ability to launch workflows. So in our world, what this has looked like is it now builds out the historical timeline of all of the meetings and conversations that we have with our clients in a note in Redtail. And you can select, like it literally knows what I'm asking Catherine to do and what Catherine's asking me to do, and puts in the activities under the client's contact record, which has just been a huge time saver. And then you can tell the meeting summary. What kind of meeting is it? What kind of conversation is it? Is it formal? Is it informal? And it'll help comprise the follow-up email. So we are big fans of FinMate around here. It solved a big problem in our business as well as in our clients' business. But if you don't like FinMate and you want to try Zox or Jump or another one, I don't really care. I think they all do a very good job, and they're going to save you a ton of time. But right now, FinMate is our go-to. So I think that answers that question about the different AI note-taking bots, which is an incredible advancement for all of us. Do you have any other thoughts on FinMate before I move on, KB?
Not necessarily. What I would definitely suggest is weigh out all of the options. Again, we
For
did
sure.
our own little research, did our own testing ourselves. And so I have been getting a lot of the questions like, should I make these changes? Should I have to? And it's like, are you unhappy with what you're using? That's always what I'm going to ask first.
Yep.
Are you running into problems? Because ultimately, these should be problem solvers, not problem creators. So if you are running into issues, then definitely scope out other options. That's really what I'm always going to suggest when it comes to integrations. If there's nothing holding you back compliant wise, pursue the items that are going to help create solutions for the frictions that you are facing on a day-to-day basis. Because I know I feel like it's kind of in the water whenever you get like one little integration, it's like, okay, well, what about this and this and this and this? And it can spiral. And so honestly, work in small digestible chunks. It's kind of like an overhead statement, I will say, with AI and integrations in general. Don't buy out off more than you could chew. Sometimes I'll see people go like, oh, I'm going to change this, I'm going to change that, and I'm going to do that. And then I'm like, you don't even have your processes in place. So you moving about the cabin here isn't going to work. So you really do want to make sure that you roll it out and adopt it firmly. I'd say almost one piece at a time so that way you don't cause more problems than you're solving. So that's just my little what
Couple
I've
of questions
seen.
here. Why don't you like Zox? And what about the G reminders note taker? It's not about liking versus not liking.
Yeah.
FinMate has completely solved our problem and a lot of our clients' problems. And because of the studies that, Kitsis, who I trust, has done, confirms the same thing. We don't feel the need to use another note taker. That being said, I will tell you one other solution. I've heard clients say, all of them, Jump, Zox, FinMate, is kind of like a one size fits all note taker. And it works for a lot of firms, but if you do need a custom note taker that is specific to the uniqueness of your firm, we had a really interesting call the other day with Ben Olson at BMO Automation, who can create custom note takers specific to your firm. So if you feel like any of these solutions don't completely solve your problem, know there are people out there that create a custom one for you. So, Catherine, if you want to drop his web address in there at BMO
Sure.
Automation for Ben, people can take a look at what his solution is. But um, all right, couple of other things. So we talked about FinMate. Somebody brought up G reminders. You guys have, we're not gonna dive too much into this, but it's been a tremendous time saver for us and our clients as an online calendaring tool that directly integrates with the two leading CRMs, as well as other CRMs. I see there's an Advise On user in here who I'll get to in just a second. But G Reminders is an online calendaring tool like Calendly, but it directly integrates with the CRM, so it eliminates that Outlook middleman. It creates new contacts, it adds opportunities, it launches workflows, which is really freaking slick. So if you guys haven't taken a look at G Reminders, it's something that has completely changed our lives as well as a lot of our clients' lives. So one of the other things, so in terms of like us practicing what we preach, is we are always trying to figure out how to do our job better, more efficiently. And I want Catherine to talk for a second about, Catherine on our team is the relationship manager. She's the lead advisor, if you will. She's the person, responsible for getting to know our clients on a deep level and coming up with solutions to help them, operationally, and help them better serve their clients. And so, one of the things she's responsible for is like keeping the ball moving forward, holding people accountable, making sure teams are getting mutual adoption of the systems and processes and technology that we're building and integrating. And that was a very manual thing for a long time until we discovered Nudge. And I'm curious, Catherine, you to share your experience using a tool like that and how that has changed your ability to be a better accountability buddy, if you will.
Yeah. So one thing that I'd commonly say that everyone can agree on, time is not your friend. You never have enough of it. And so here you are trying to keep on top of everything that's new and then following up with it. That is where Nudge just perfectly slips in. So you can keep it really, really, really simple and just do it with like the same, I'm going to call it a task reminder over and over and over and over. But that's not how I use it. So I actually built out basically a bunch of templates that I find that I do repeat frequently. I assign it off to what we call our project champion, and then it actually nudges, hence the name, nudges them as a reminder, say, hey, you have this assignment due. So something that we do is like the cleanup spreadsheet. It can take several weeks, several months to work through that. And sometimes it's really easy for our clients to get kind of, sticker shocked over here, distracted in the corner, working on some other items, and then they forget about the cleanup. And I'm like, no, 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 you still have this open. We're not done with it. So it really just pushes them. And it's that like little, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Let me go work on that piece here. So it is quite literally a assignment tool and a follow-up tool all in once. What I absolutely love about it though, is that once that task is completed, it actually shoots me over a text message and an email. So if I happen to be, away from my desk, I'm making lunch or something, and someone texts me, I'll actually get like hey, this nudge mark has been completed. Same with someone can respond. So if let's say I assign something over to Kate, and she has questions on it, she can actually message me through that. I can clarify it further. It goes back to her, and then she can go from there. So it does really give me real-time communication for those tasks. So that way, again, they're following up on me. It's a little less manual work I end up having to do, but we still get that end result that we're all looking for. So it is incredible if you have a lot of things that you just feel like are super, super repetitive with the follow-ups.
Yeah.
I'd heavily look into Nudge. They
New
do,
client paperwork and sending
yeah.
out forms and making sure you get them back. I see that as a really common use case, and I don't know, I think it's a really cool tool that's helped us
Ooh, and just to
better
clarify,
manage
Nikki, it's Nudge, Knudge. So Knudge, if you want, if you want to look at it with the spelling that way. You do get a baker's dozen free of contacts. So if you just wanted to test it out with like, let's say a good couple contacts, it's actually completely free up to 13 contacts. And then it does connect to your CRM as well. So again, if you have those messages, they go over in as notes. And again, I can look from the CRM what has been completed on that end too. So it really is chef kiss seamless.
That's really cool, a really cool tool. A couple of other things that I want to mention here. When we make recommendations, we always keep in mind, like all of the recommendations that we make need to play very nicely with your CRM. We firmly believe that that should be the operational hub of your business. I'm sure you guys have all heard me say that before. But there are some other tools that you should consider to make the user's experience even easier. Like we use workflows to manage our business. We have templated all of our client communication and emails and notes and activities because so much of what we do is repetitive. And so thinking of tools and thinking of things that let me put it this way. When you start to feel some friction around follow-ups or client communication, or man, I'm sifting through my email to find the last best email I had, explaining something. That's when you feel friction around those things, that's a really good indication that you need to look at your process and look to template things. And one of the things that we're doing as a team right now is tracking time, which has been a very interesting exercise where we run a pretty small, lean team. And, when we feel like, oh man, I'm just so bogged down, we can't help any more clients. Feel like they're going to slip through the cracks. We're trying to figure out what is everybody working on. And if you're going to start building out systems, processes, and integrating technology, I first suggest that you figure out what is everybody doing. Because it's really wild when you do this level of analysis to see how much stuff people are doing that are of zero value. And I don't mean to say that like crassly. I mean, when you are trying to evaluate what should people be doing and you're building out workflows to show people how to do it, you need to make sure that people are all working on the highest value things. So if there are things that your clients don't perceive as high value, stop doing them. And the way we have figured out what are the things that are of the highest value and what are the things that are the lowest value is we've set up a feedback loop. We ask our clients, what do they see as valuable? What do they see as not so valuable? And then we apply something that Jen Goldman taught me years ago, IDEOS, IDEOS. Well, if it's not that valuable, but it's something that needs to be done, can we integrate it? Can we delegate it? Can we outsource it? ID, integrate, delegate, eliminate, IDE, eliminate, O, outsource, S, staff. So as you're thinking through what your processes need to be, you need to figure out what are people actually doing and what is the highest and best use of people's time, and get very clear on who should be doing what. And I have just found that time tracking is a phenomenal way to figure this out. It's a temporary thing that we're doing, but it's given us some incredible insights of how we can run our practice better. And I want to touch on one thing when you're thinking through IDEOS. The integrate is obvious. Like if there's technology that you can use that it's going to create efficiency, like Nudge, do that. Eliminate if there's things that aren't valuable, stop doing them. Outsourcing, if there's another professional that can do it better and has the skill set to be able to do it, quicker and easier than you, do that. IDEO. Okay, so an S. This has been something that has changed Katherine in my life since the beginning of the year. Is we've hired a couple of virtual assistants to help us run our business and help with implementation. And I can't say enough good things about having a part-time administrative person to handle. I think Katherine and I were kind of like small-minded in the beginning
100%.
with the idea of having a virtual assistant, but now it's taken some time for them to gain our trust and teach them the ropes, but like they're handling emails, they're handling cleanup, organization, all of the administrative stuff, sending invoices. I just am blown away at what a virtual assistant is able to do. And so if you are feeling like you are pinched for time, I've got to make the recommendation to look to virtual assistants, whether that's an overseas person, happy to give recommendations on that, or an industry specific person to help do the Schwab paperwork or the custodial paperwork, or help dial in your systems or clean up or whatever it is. One of our strategic partners is Olivia with Village Financial Services, who's a phenomenal virtual assistant and has solved that piece for a lot of our clients. And so if you guys are, if you're looking for a sign to hire a virtual assistant, this is it. They, are, as soon as you get out of the mindset of them being an expense and look at them as an investment to free up your time, I can guarantee you're going to be able to serve and help so many more people and go so much deeper with your clients by outsourcing and handing off some of the lower level tasks. So I just had to make a mention there because Katherine and I have had a tremendous experience working with VAs over the last couple of weeks.
And then I actually want to even say one thing further too, because I'm sure, I feel like I've heard this from everyone, is that, hey, we're trying to hire or we are hiring, but now we have the time and I have to dedicate that time to hire them. Remember that anytime you bring someone new on board, if you do dedicate the time to teach them, record it if possible so they have a reference to it. It may feel a little bit weird at first that you're just like, oh my gosh, I do not have this time. Trust me, I was in that mentality where I'm like, okay, I'm taking this hour to go through with this one. I'm losing this hour. But I have now been able to safely say with that switch, me taking that hour training my VA has given me so many hours back because they know how to do that task. It's no longer something that's wearing down my day. And it's that freeing capability. So it's the short-term pain, long-term gain. You think of it that way, 100% it's worth it.
All right, I'm gonna keep moving on here, KB, if you're good with it. I do want to say there one last thing that I think has changed our business is structured meetings. We used to,
Yes.
having meetings are necessary, but often bog people down. And so we've adopted this EOS level 10 meeting structure where we meet as a team once a week for 1 hour. Everybody adds the things that need to be talked about to this agenda. We have a very clear agenda of what needs to be covered. It's a very productive meeting. Everybody comes ready to get stuff done, knock stuff out. If it's something that can't be discussed in that hour, we've set aside a quarterly work on the business day where we work through some of the tough stuff. And this has it's just eliminated so much back and forth and chatting and one-off conversations where we know we've got 1 hour on Mondays to sit down, buckle down, talk as a team. And that has been a huge game changer. So if you're struggling with disorganized meetings or unproductive meetings, or just meeting with your team too many times over the course of the week, stop doing that. And look into this level 10 meeting structure. If anybody's interested, you're welcome to shoot me an email and I can drop the level 10 framework to you, but that's been a game changer. All right, Katherine, I want to get to some of these questions that we have in the queue here.
Yeah.
John, I've received your LinkedIn messages. I have not had a chance to get back to you. I was out yesterday, but did I make the wrong choice going with Advizon? I don't know the answer to that. We work with Redtail and Wealthbox. They are the two industry leading CRMs. They, have the majority of the market share and get the highest client satisfaction rate. We are not Advizon experts by any means. I've heard wonderful things about Advizon from Advizon users. But I can't give you any advice on how to build workflows and templates or anything like that. And if I'm being totally honest with you, I don't know somebody like us that does specifically Advizon work. I'd be happy to ask around my network if anybody knows anybody. But at this point, I do not have a recommendation for you. I'm not sure if you are a member of our free community. Katherine, you want to drop our school?
Sure can.
Yeah, John, if you want to join our free community, it's of RIA owners and operators, and a great place to pitch questions just like this to other people on the front lines with just like you and get some feedback. So sorry, I can't be more helpful with Advizon, but I've heard really good things. I'm just not an expert. Okay. Recently switched from Redtail to Wealthbox and generally pleased, but I missed the Redtail sync of contacts with Microsoft Outlook or Google Contacts on an Android. I've asked if Wealthbox has similar or third-party integrations to sync Wealthbox contacts, and they mentioned creating a Zap. That doesn't seem all that elegant. Seems like having Wealthbox contacts accessible on an Android would be a basic necessity. Thoughts? I don't know. What do you think, Catherine?
I mean, this is one of the clunkier things that I don't love about it. I'll be completely honest, but I mean, at the end of the day, the goal is to get it from Wealthbox over into Outlook predominantly for your phone usage. You would probably be looking into Zap. I would almost argue I'd give a shot to the app itself for Wealthbox, see if that could even just solve the solution of just trying to get that contact information and calling them really quick. If that's the end goal, I can ask around and see if there is going to be any plans and improvements in terms of that, but I know like their main focus was on the email and the calendar syncing portion. But I wouldn't be shocked. Every time I bring something up, I swear they're working on it in the background. So cross your fingers that magic's still going.
Okay. All right. Do you have suggested basic audits or reports that firms use in Wealthbox, either monthly, quarterly, or weekly? For example, running open task report, missing addresses, birthdays. Do you have other basics that you run to improve efficiency to keep you kind of touched on this, Catherine, with the quarterly Wealthbox maintenance workflow?
I did. So it's actually going to be several workflows. So you are on the right track with the whole open task, because again, I said it earlier, the last thing you want is a bunch of overdue. But you're right, the contact card information, your basic Rolodex info, email, phone number, address, 100% you should always have that, especially if they're clients. And if not, major red flag to me. Those are easy. Give me reports as well. The birthday is one thing, and I shouldn't chuckle at it. It's the one thing that's limited in Wealthbox, because sure, he can give it to you, but you always have to go outside of it in terms of acknowledgement. So I would say have that for paperwork, but definitely what you want to approach with it is what you really need anytime you open up a new account and anything that's going to add value to that contact record. So in the maintenance workflow that I referenced earlier, it's going to start out with what I'd consider the basics, your contact type. Who in the world are these people? Everyone should be labeled, so you're never staring at a contact going, what is this? And then it's also going into, like we said, open tasks, open workflow steps, making sure the contact card is actually assigned to an advisor. You'd be surprised how many times that's not a thing. Thinking about other things like tag groups that they should belong to, or custom fields that you want to keep track of. So your custom or your quarterly maintenance workflow would be a little bit more custom in terms of like tracking it. But keep in mind, you could have smaller workflows where it's like a run weekly, double check these items, and then a massive one that I consider more quarterly. But you're on the right track. You do want to have those types of things in a report. It's just going to be multiple.
And our quarterly Wealthbox maintenance workflow is available on the Wealthbox library.
Yeah.
So you can apply that to what am I trying to say? Your workspace.
Yeah. And those you can literally, you'll have to click duplicate first, but then you can add edit to your heart's content. So don't feel
Yeah.
like you're limited to that one.
Okay, Tim had a question. I think I'm not sure he's totally understanding. I think you mentioned being able to complete a workflow
Mm,
step in non-sequential order. So no, the steps are still in sequential order, but the tasks within the step can be done in any order. So you cannot move on to the next step until those tasks are complete, but the tasks can be done in any order. So Catherine and I can be killing two birds with one stone.
Correct. And then to clarify with Wealthbox, because they do legit use the word sequential and non-sequential, think of it like a literal checklist. There's no like, hey, step one, step two. It's literally just all of the items. And technically you can complete them because again, it's literally a checklist. Don't over exaggerate it here. So it is one that I would say proceed with caution. I still like to have real order in things. And I put the steps in the order that they should still ultimately be in, but technically they do have a non-sequential and sequential in Wealth Loss specifically. And then, I mean, with Redtail, if you approach it the same logic, if you have a one step 20 task workflow, I could do step or task 20 while Kate's doing task 2. It is
Understood.
100% possible, but I'd again proceed with caution. I would always build it out in the order that you legitimately would like it to be worked on.
Okay, these are good questions. So, hi, we're moving to Wealthbox and thinking about initial setups. Quarter one. Oh, question one. Do you have recommendations in setting up Wealthbox for wealth management firms that also prepare income tax returns for clients each year? Yes. Question two, what types of issues, challenges do you commonly see with firms that also prepare tax returns in-house for wealth management, using Wealthbox as their CRM? So the first one is setting up Wealthbox for wealth management firms that also prepare income tax. I'm curious, Catherine, if you want to touch on like just what are your best practices for getting a new wealth box set up?
Yeah. So starting out, I'm not going to get too specific initially, but again, you want to come in with some of the gimme answers first. Contact type. Contact type really just helps explain who is in your actual CRM. So think about clients, prospects. This could be inactive clients. It could be deceased contacts. It could be technically a personal contact. While that's not my favorite, it is one that I see heavily. You want to start out with assigning that to a contact to begin with. And then we also like to use a custom field for categories to help really segment your business further. This is where you could, again, depending on how you want to set this up, this is where you could start to segment what type of client they really are.
Right.
I still always usually like approach it with either like a revenue generating concept and have like a tiering system. You're not stuck with a tier system. You could literally do whatever you want with that one. But ultimately, you want to define specific who is this group, who is that group. And then if you happen to have people who you have overlap, they have investments, they have taxes, you do insurance for them, you do literally everything under the sun for them. This is also where you're going to want to use tags to your advantage because that is where you can list in to say, hey, they could be all three types of clients and it exists on the contact record. And it's also something that you'd be able to filter off of. So starting out by really creating what I consider the pockets in your CRM is step one. Because if you can't find the right groups of contacts quickly, that's going to be painful for the end of time. So start with that. And then this is when I'd start to consider what do we do with them on a day-to-day basis? You want to keep track of what you've done. What I've commonly seen people fail with when it comes to taxes in particular is because for the most part, there aren't workflows out there. So you need to create them. And anytime I hear, hey, we have to start from scratch, it's usually like, heavy sigh. I don't have the time. But remember, this is another short-term, long-term game. If we build out the workflows, you can keep track of where you're at in the process. And that way you're not losing anything along the way. So that is kind of like more of the further down the road. You do need to have that so you can keep track of everything. But again, really, it starts with like whole contact management, get everything organized, get everything in there, get it all dialed in. And then you could start to talk about like your tasks and your templates and your workflows to really help streamline your process. So goal
It's not
today,
much different than just a traditional, wealth management
no,
practice. we are using a wealth management CRM to run our business, and we're not financial advisors.
Yeah.
We've got to figure out, what is the most logical way to organize it? What are the
Yeah.
repeatable things that you do, and apply that same knowledge to the tax side of your business to standardize those operating procedures. That makes complete sense.
100%. Yep. So keep it, like I said, keep it as simple as possible. Kate, keep me humble here. I believe we still have like a style guide on our website.
Oh yeah,
Definitely
for
could
sure.
be a good starting point if you're sitting there and then it's just like, I get it. Sometimes when you see a blank sheet of paper in front of you and you're just like, where do I
Yeah, it's a
start?
good tool to use to get started for sure.
Start there and then just evolve it for the different branches that you have for clients.
Okay, here, this is a really good one. Our firm just moved to Wealthbox and we're implementing a centralized service model.
Ooh.
Do you have suggestions on assigning tasks or workflows to a team versus an individual team member? You want to talk for a second? You want to give her the inside scoop on how to use Wealthbox as a proactive client service vehicle, and explain that to her?
Yeah, so a couple of things here. We'll start off with what I'd recommend in terms of getting it where it's that repeatable process. So this is one I will be frank, I'm completely cool with either a tag or a custom field. It's going to accomplish the exact same thing at the end of the day. But you're going to want to be able to list off quickly who you're meeting with in each month. Now, don't get hung up on the fact that I just said each month. You can have a client that you meet with 4 times a year, 2 times a year, in which case you're just applying more tags, or you go the custom field route, you're just selecting the radio dials for the months that you want it to apply to. Both of those are filterable. That's why I'm really not picking on which one here. Why we recommend that route is because then you get a true list of contacts that you're ultimately trying to reach out to. And especially if you're proactive about it, they come in that timely manner. So I'm pretty much mid-February here, surprisingly already. I feel like time's flying. This is when I should start to reviewing my contacts for March. Make sure that that is accurate. I can run that list. I can then reach out to them, get them scheduled. And then again, just keep that process going. Now, with the whole tasks and workflows here, when it comes to something that I'm going to consider more consistent, whether you call it a review meeting or a strategy meeting or whatever crafty name you might have given it at this point, that tends to be the same format. You have some items you do beforehand, you have some day of items, and then you have a bunch of follow-up tasks to do that. That is a workflow. You could have the meeting itself be on your calendar, but the actual before, day of, and after, that is a beautiful example of a workflow. Now, with Wealthbox, this is where we get, again, another little asterisk. I normally love to assign steps to a actual team. And it's really just because if that person ever left, I don't have to go into 40 different workflows where this one person was a part of it and have to reassign every single one of those steps. The one problem you may run into is that you are limited on the amount of teams that you have in Wealthbox. So this is where I'm also going to heavily suggest don't be afraid of roles. Roles are customizable. That's the beautiful part of Wealthbox. So if you wanted to have it where you have a paraplanner and that takes part in a heavy amount of tasks, please, by all means, list a role of paraplanner. If you are on an enterprise level where you have an infinite amount of teams, make a team for every single user. Just immediately do that because it's, again, very easy. That person leaves, you switch out the name, they're taking over those tasks, you're all done. Takes you a grand total of probably a minute and a half. So really use what you have. It may be, again, a matter of figuring out what plan you're on, but I would always suggest using those teams, using those roles first over an actual user, just for that more dynamic capability. Oh, Kate, I think I lost you there.
I muted myself and forgot to unmute myself. Sorry. Rookie mistake. So I've had a couple people ask here about accessing the quarterly maintenance workflow from the library. Do you know where to pull? Can you show them where to pull that up in Wealthbox? Do you know off the top of your head, or we can send them the details if that's more helpful?
Yeah, I can show it and they could verify to see if they have it. If not, it is something that it could be a very easy, hey, just reach out to reach out to Wealthbox in that manner, and they should be okay to kind of just okay it.
Okay.
So let me scroll on over. So if you come on over to workflows, I know, shocker, no one saw me going there. Come to workflows on the left, let it load for a hot second, come to the manage templates. By default, it goes to published. You're going to want to come in here. So if you do not see one, obviously we're in our demo database that has this. you're going to literally look for one that says Simplicity Ops. If you do not see that, just send a quick message over into the success team at Wealthbox and just say, hey, I would love to have the Simplicity Ops, specifically that quarterly maintenance. They'll give you access to it. And then it really looks like, I'm just going to pick on one here. It'll be another folder where the only option will be to duplicate it. And then that's how you could use it going forward. So definitely though, success team, they shouldn't have any issues. And if they do, just reach out to us. We can give an A-OK. If you want to like CC us on it, that should be fine.
And good news, Redtail has a workflow library too that we are going to be contributing to. So Redtail users, keep your eyes peeled for those. We will let you know when that is released. And then one last thing, we're going to wrap up here. I really appreciate all these questions, you guys. This is great. But for my Redtail users, I don't know if you saw the release today. They've made some improvements to Sweet Sync. That's been our running joke because it was such a crappy rollout. We took it, anyway, Sweet Sync has been improved. Rollouts were made today. We are going to test it in our own system before we put our stamp of approval on it to ensure we don't run into the same headache that we ran into at the end of last year. For those of you that are Redtail users, keep your eyes peeled for a post in our community with our thoughts on that feature. We'll get that out probably before the end of next week. But yeah, Katherine, thank you for sharing your knowledge with everybody. Thank you everybody for hanging out and asking good questions today. We look forward to doing hopefully more of these in the future. If anybody has any questions or wants to take a deep dive into their systems, please feel free to reach out. We'd love to talk with you all.
Thanks, everyone.
See you guys.